So for Aera in Action, we wanted to share with you the day in the life of a planner working side by side with Aera today, with the current version of Aera. So we will go through a variety of situations that most organizations are facing, like daily, checking a dashboard, handling like the most pressing situation and decisions, then being hit by some unexpected events and having to address them ad hoc before wrapping up and looking across all decisions made in the enterprise. We'll try to do all this in 10 minutes. And for that, I have Juliana with me. So good morning, Juliana.
Morning.
Can you tell us a little bit about your role?
Yeah, so I'm actually going back in memory lane for me as a planner. So I'm going to be a materials planner in this demo. And I am responsible for making sure that we have raw materials to support our production plans, ensuring supply reliability, and making sure I'm optimizing costs where I can.
So great that you're a material planner. So how do you start your day usually?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think, yeah, here we go.
Absolutely. So here's my Aera, my Aera platform. The first thing that I do is I access what I call my morning briefing dashboard. Mm-hmm. It's in the control room where I get a sense of what's happened in the business since I last logged on. So, I can see where my last logged on was and all of the different messages that are coming through with updates on the areas that I'm focusing on. So, KPIs that matter to me, how many recommendations were executed when I was sleeping last night. So this is how I start my day. This gives me a sense of, is it going to be a crazy day or is it going to be a relatively okay day?
How does it look like right now?
It looks pretty normal. So I can see, my first thing is production delays. I can see there's a non-conforming shipment that I may need to look into. It may be or may not be a bad day for me. So we'll see.
So who decides actually what is important for you?
I designed this dashboard with parameters and things that I'm responsible for to make sure that I'm alerted on the things that matter to me.
Okay, so where do you take it next?
Yeah, so after I look at my morning briefing, I go right into my material risk management skill. And the first thing that I do is I go into my decision inbox, right? So similar to this concept of Gmail, my inbox, I log in the morning and I see what are some of the decisions that Aera is recommending for me to do? So I can see I have 9 pending my review, 20 were completed in this particular space for me. And I just go through all of the recommendations one by one.
And when you have more than 9, and how do you organize and prioritize your work here?
Yeah, fair question. Oftentimes I get way more than 9. So I have the ability to either filter by material, sort by, or filter by a specific location, sort by priority, which is what I'm going to do next. Or I can just sort by, let's say, event day, right? So I'm making sure that I'm tackling the things that are going to happen sooner.
And can you get the full explanation of those decisions before you accept them?
Yeah, let's dig into one. So this one, it's actually related to that production delay that we saw earlier, and it's telling me, that I may need to use an alternate BOM, or that Aera is recommending that I use an alternate BOM or bill of materials due to a non-conformance. So on the left side, I see in plain language what the recommendation is telling me to do with an additional verbiage on what happened. So there's 16 units that are short on a particular material. And then on the right, I can see where this came from, right? So clearly somebody took a picture at the warehouse and Aera caught or read this picture and caught that there was a non-conformance with this delivery. So I get more information on the right about, what was the trigger? What is the impact of this recommendation? So things like, what is the cost of using the alternate material in that bill of material? What's the shortage? Even, what are some of the customers that may be impacted as well? Things like feasibility checks. Do we even have the inventory on that alternate material? So do I look healthy to use it? And then what were other alternatives evaluated, right? So oftentimes, I would ask myself, couldn't we get more from that same supplier that is conforming? But it seems like we're too close to production time, so we might just need to swap the BOM.
So when you agree with the decision here, and you have the full explanation, obviously, means what happens when you accept?
Yeah, so that's that's the beauty of Aera. So when I accept here, all of the relevant actions take place in the execution system. So things like going into my ERP to change that BOM with the alternate material. And then I may also want to notify my production planners that they're going to be using an alternate BOM. And then same thing with that supplier. I may also want to tell them, hey, we had an issue with your delivery. And I even have a recommended text for my communications, but I can tweak it as needed if I wanted to add my personal message for that supplier as well.
So Aera is managing the execution and the communication here.
That's correct, yes.
All right, but okay, this is a typical situation, and you can see that Aera actually captured it and then was dealing with it. What happens if something is happening like totally ad hoc, unexpected, and it's not captured by your system yet?
Yeah, I know where you're going with this. So I'll flash an example here. So just this morning, I got an email from one of our contracted manufacturers here saying that we're having an issue with our material. C0001, and then there's 4,500 units that are at risk. So I get this email, and this is obviously not something that it's been captured by Aera just yet. It's just in my inbox, right? So the first thing that I do is I go back to Aera and I ask Aera, how many POs. I try to get a sense of how many POs do I have for that material out there. So
yeah, you want to know what is your risk and. Yeah,
that's right. I want to know what's my risk and start seeing what my possible alternatives for resolving this risk could be. So I can ask it things like, what are my open POs for this material by supplier to see if I even have more suppliers that I can leverage.
So let's do it.
So what are my open POs for material C001 by supplier? And I'll just ask that question, and Aera is retrieving this information, and I can start thinking about, okay, what am I going to do?
So is it searching for some report which actually exist already? And
no, this is accessing my system of records on the fly, right? So Aera doesn't know what questions I'm going to ask next. This is not pre-recorded, report or anything like that.
Indeed, it is generating the query on the data, the visualization, like on the fly, right?
Absolutely.
And on any data that has been exposed to the Aera.
Yeah, and in my past life, this would have taken me, a few minutes, if not hours, to, sometimes chase this information, try to pull the reports and understand what my exposure was. So I can quickly see that Zentro makes up a big chunk of the POs that I have out there, and I have 4,500 units. At risk for this supplier.
Now what?
Now what? So now I do some simulations. I try to understand, okay, so how can I reallocate some of this quantity at risk across the rest of the suppliers here? So for that, I have a simulation dashboard that I can create as many scenarios that I want here. I've already pre-created a manual override scenario so that I can start playing around with reallocations. So the first thing that I do is I enter my quantity at risk, the 4,500 units. That automatically gives me a visual of the impact, right? So I see I'm going to be in the red, and my impact from a cost perspective as well of 147K. And then, I have information that helps me do some of the simulations, like what are my contracted amounts, what are the weekly capacities that these suppliers have for me, and I can start just reallocating that quantity here. So let's just do that exercise together. All right.
There you go.
And yeah, so I've reallocated effectively the 4,500 units across my 4 suppliers. And I can see I end in about, 150K of cost.
Yeah, the cost is increasing. Okay, so, and you probably have to submit this to someone so that they actually make the POs changes.
Right, so I submit this reallocation so that the POs can be created for the additional quantities with these suppliers, and similarly, I could send communications as well.
But is that a way Aera could do this for you, even if it was not expected?
Yes, so one thing that I could do is I could have that email come into my inbox the same way that we saw it, and I can just forward that email to the Aera platform. So I can send it to the Aera platform. And then once the Aera platform receives it, I can go back to my decision inbox, and I will see there that I now have a new recommendation.
When you say you are sending it to the Aera platform, you mean Aera Technology and they are dealing with the problem?
No, not the Aera Technology email. It's my own
So we
Aera
don't
platform.
deal with it, right? It goes to your Aera.
Correct. Yeah, and I could even give my suppliers this email address so that they could send information that happens directly to that inbox, right? So these are the things that are captured outside of, of
and
our
that's just a way. Email is just a way to do it. It could be another mean of communication, the way to capture the signal.
Absolutely, yes. So we can look into it, right? So if we double click on this new one that just popped up there, I can see there's an email now. That's the same email that I received in my inbox, now in my Aera inbox, and the summary of that email, the Aera analysis of the impact of that email, right? So 4,500 units at risk, the same information we knew already. The relevant information, right, on the impact and even the simulation, right? So if I go into the simulation, now I can see there's another scenario that is an Aera created scenario where Aera is doing the simulation on my behalf. So the same 4,500 units are now spread across 2 suppliers and not 4. And my cost is yielding a better output than the one that I had, right? So I was at 150, so it's slightly lower. But it's actually telling me that I should probably spread it between 2 and not all 4, like I thought.
So what Aera did here is use the same simulation tools that you use manually, but then it did it automatically. It generated the decision flow, right, based on that event automatically.
It did it all for me.
And you accept it like you did before? Or?
Yeah, so we hit accept, and the same, same flow. We can cancel any relevant POs, create the new POs for the additional amounts that we're now ordering, and that is all gonna go through directly to my ERP.
So let's do it.
Okay.
There we go. Done. Indeed. So we heard Hershey earlier today mentioning about, the measure of decisions and the value and the impact and that they were tracking. So how do you capture all this information and get oversight across your decisions, but also the other planners' decisions, including maybe the other domains like production or demand planning?
Yeah, so that's really the role of my decision intelligence COE, and they have access to dashboards with decision analytics. So things like, how many recommendations have been issued by the platform, how many were accepted, how many were rejected. They can go down to the level of, users, evaluate what are the root causes for these rejections or acceptances, what are the top reasons for rejection. So all of this information is driven by our decision graphs as well, right, where we have more on what's feeding these analytics by user or by the network, right? So Aera can learn from the decisions made by the users, but it also learns from the root cause that these users are assigning and the impact to the business.
All these decisions are memorized, and the life cycle of decisions, like from the generation to the execution, is memorized, measured, and tracked so that Aera can learn from people feedback, from performance, as well from root causes, right?
Yeah, right. So, and going back to our example earlier, everything's memorized, the event, the context of the event, and then even, what I did with the recommendation, did I accept or denied.
Yeah. So thanks a lot, Juliana.
Of course.
Thanks
no
a lot.
Problem.